This video is one of those lovely times that I can say, I told you so. If you remember, back in September 2022, I did a video about bot Sentinel and how I believed that it was in breach of GDPR. If that person is not told about that and they are profiled and monitored and further processing occurs of that publicly accessible information and the data subject is not told about it, then in my view, this would be a breach of GDPR. Now, this is entirely my own opinion. It's not been confirmed by anybody else, much less by Twitter, but the bot Sentinel account, if you haven't heard by now, has been suspended by Twitter for violating Twitter's rules. Not only has the bot Sentinel account on Twitter been suspended, but the Spoutable account has also been suspended on Twitter. Now, why do I say I told you so? Well, because my interpretation of the Twitter rules, which I'll put up on screen in a moment, means that it is very, very likely that it is the privacy aspect of the Twitter rules that has led Twitter to take the decision to suspend those accounts. Now, in brief, my previous videos talked about how GDPR applies to all information, even if it is in, quote, the public domain. Because a lot of people believe that if information is in the, quote, public domain, then it's fair game for anyone to use, process, store, and do anything they like with, which of course is not true. Because it's still personal information, and if a company is gathering and using and processing, storing and sharing and manipulating and doing whatever kind of analysis on that data that they choose, it still has to comply with GDPR. Now, when looking at the Twitter rules, there is a whole section on safety, there's a whole section on privacy, and a whole section on authenticity, and of course, some stuff related to third-party advertising. The outset of the rules says Twitter's purpose is to serve public conversation. Violence, harassment, and other similar types of behavior discourage people from expressing themselves and ultimately diminish the value of global public conversation. Our rules are to ensure that people can participate in public conversation freely and safely. Now, it's possible but doubtful that the Spoutable and bot Sentinel accounts have been suspended for anything to do with the safety aspects, which are listed on screen here. Much more likely, however, that it's either to do with the privacy aspect of the Twitter rules and or the authenticity. Authenticity including platform manipulation and spam, which says you may not use Twitter services in a manner intended to artificially amplify or suppress information or engage in behavior that manipulates or disrupts people's experience on Twitter. Civil integrity. You may not use Twitter services for the purpose of manipulating or interfering in elections or other civic processes. This includes posting or sharing content that may suppress participation or mislead people about when, where, or how to participate in civil process. Misleading or deceptive identities, synthetic and manipulated media, copyright or trademark. This is an interesting one. You may not violate others' intellectual property rights, including copyright and trademark. Now, just on that moment, because it overlaps with privacy and personal information, vis-a-vis GDPR, but I'll come back to that in a moment, talking about copyright and trademark, I put up a video to say, you are being tracked. Bot Sentinel tracks all accounts, it says. Breach of GDPR? ? My conclusion on that was yes. In my view, bot Sentinel was in breach of GDPR because it did not have the either legitimate means of processing or certainly not consent of every single account on Twitter that it tracks. Numerous people had complained and said that they want them to stop tracking their account, but they were all met with failure and refusal, and most people just received no reply at all. Because bot Sentinel just did not reply and did not take seriously those requests of individuals to stop tracking their account. My conclusion, as I said in my video, was that bot Sentinel was in breach of GDPR, and ultimately that should lead to some kind of action. And it's possible that exactly that reason has been used by Twitter to suspend this account. It may equally be for platform manipulation and spam, and or the copyright and trademark aspects that I've just been talking about, because many of you know that my channel name, BlackBeltBarrister, is trademarked. I have the exclusive right to use and to manipulate and to commercialize, if I so wish, the BlackBeltBarrister trademarked name. And if bot Sentinel were to reproduce my trademarked name, along with anybody else's, that would be breach of trademark. If they were to copy and reproduce anyone else's text, that would be breach of copyright, because the copyright holder, usually the author, but not always, has the sole right to reproduce, to copy, manipulate, and make enhancements, modifications, adaptations, and all of that sort of stuff, unless it is what we know as fair use or fair dealing, depending on your jurisdiction. And even then, you've got to add something to it. For example, you can't just slap up someone else's YouTube video and say, this is just a mirror, so therefore it's fair use, because it's not. If you use a tiny snippet of someone's video and then comment on it, use another snippet and comment on that, then that's perfectly fine as far as copyright goes. I did exactly that with a BBC episode of Silk, and a lot of people liked it. It didn't do quite as well as I'd hoped, so I didn't do any more, but if you want to see more of those, I'll link it in the description below. Go and watch it. If you like it, tell me, I'll make more of them. Nonetheless, the BBC did challenge me on the copyright for that, and I challenged it robustly, saying that I'm prepared to go to court if necessary. And ultimately, they just let the appeal run its course and my video reinstated. But back to Bot Sentinel and its suspension from Twitter. It is either, in my view, on the privacy aspect of the terms of Twitter for the misuse of private information. It says you must not publish or post other people's private information, such as their home number, address, and whatever, without their express authorization, or any account features of any Twitter account other than your own, or those you've been directly authorized to do so via Twitter's Teams authorization, OAuth authorization, or similar mechanism. So it may well be that they've determined that it is in breach of the authorization that has been granted previously, and therefore suspended that authorization and therefore suspended the account, if perhaps they've just repeatedly gone too far. But equally, it might be under the platform manipulation, spam, or any of these other things. Ultimately, a large-scale we track all accounts approach was ultimately doomed to failure, as I more than just alluded to in my previous videos and outright suggested that they were in breach of GDPR. I'll link those previous videos back from September in the description below. You can go and read those as well. But I, for one, am pleased that this is no longer tracking my account along with everybody else's accounts, because I just don't believe that any system should be permitted to track, monitor, process, manipulate, analyze every other account without your permission. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I think I did do polls on that beforehand, and it was an overwhelming you would prefer not to be tracked and monitored in the way that they have done so. And last but not least, I would mention the news articles way back from August of 2022, around about the time that I did my video, where the news articles said, amid legal disputes with Elon Musk over bots, Twitter threatens to revoke Bot Sentinel's data access. In response to which, Chris Boozy said, and I quote, "If Twitter insists on forcing us to remove this data, we will temporarily remove it from our platform and then pass the same data from Wayback Machine. Not sure why Twitter wants to interfere with Bot Sentinel while they are in a legal battle." So a very strange response to say that if you tell us to remove it, we'll just get it from somewhere else, which is ultimately the same data. So a flawed legal argument, in my humble view, however way you look at that. It's a bit like saying, well, if you force us to take down the official copy, we'll find a backup copy from somewhere else. It's still a copy, it's still the same data, it's still the same information, it still breaches the rules because they own the data, because it was produced and derived from their platform. So that was ultimately a flawed argument from the beginning. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting thing to update you on. As it stands, whether it persists or not, the Spoutable and Bot Sentinel Twitter accounts have been suspended. Some of you might be annoyed, but I suspect the vast majority of you will be pleased about it. Let me know what you think. Which side of the fence do you fall on? As always, I report it to you as it comes about, with my views, with my legal views or my personal views as I declare them to be, as appropriate as we go along. Let me know what you think. Make sure to like the video and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.